Hi, I'm Rich.
And I'm Tina.
And if there's one thing we've learned in over 20 years of marriage,
sometimes Rich is going to screw up the introduction.
and sometimes Tina's going to screw up the introduction.
Welcome to Love, Marry, Kill.
Hey, Tina.
Hey, Rich.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great intro.
You'd think we'd have it down, but man, that took us 46 times.
It did take us a while.
It did take us a while. We had the giggles.
Some days are a little rough. I'm glad to be here with you today, and I'm excited to tell you the story I'm going to tell you today.
Me too.
I went deep on this one.
You've been warning me for the last couple weeks.
Yeah, so I started off reading a book. The case we're going to talk about is about the death of a woman named Mary Yoder. I started off reading a book by M. William Phelps, which had a lot of great information in it, but then I found a trial transcript, 3,000 pages.
You went deep.
Of trial transcript.
3,000?
Yes, 3,000 pages.
How long was the trial?
Oh, I don't know. We'll talk
I guess
about
we'll
that
get
later.
to that.
But yeah, it was a lot of information. So I've got a lot of really good detail. I think it's a really interesting case. But
you didn't read the whole 3,000 pages,
no,
did you?
No. I read the most relevant parts. But before we get into the case, I do have a snack for you, and it came all the way from Ireland.
Ah, the land of my ancestors.
Yes, exactly.
That was an Irish accent.
That was perfect. Spot on.
Oh, gosh.
So when I was in Europe recently, my colleague Helen, who lives in Ireland, she brought me a snack.
Oh, that was so nice.
I know, it was really nice, and I wasn't sure if it was going to make the trip back very well, but it did. But she also described for me how to make, out of the snack that she brought, a traditional Irish snack that you eat after a long night of like going out drinking.
Okay.
So what I brought is, these are potato chips, or crisps, as they're known.
Right.
But they are called Tatoes, cheese and onion crisps.
Why are they open?
Well, because I had to make the sandwich out of them. So what you make
Wait, what?
is you make an Irish crisp sandwich,
Oh.
which is essentially white bread, butter, and potato chips.
Okay, I'm in.
So yeah.
We don't normally eat white bread, but whenever I do, I really enjoy it.
Yeah, I did not get traditionally you would make this with Brennan's bread, which is from Ireland, but I couldn't find that anywhere. But I did get Kerrygold Irish butter to put on the bread, because I'm sure it's a completely different thing.
Very authentic.
Yes.
We've probably mentioned this before, but we both do have Irish heritage.
Yes, we do.
And I have bright red hair.
You do. Beautiful.
Yes.
Beautiful red
Well,
hair.
I don't know about that, but yes,
And I also brought, Helen also brought me this Cadbury Dairy Milk Bar, which was made in Ireland as well.
Oh, is that, so you brought home a bunch of snacks, not for the podcast, but for our family
Right.
when you were in Europe. Is that the same thing that you brought us?
No, this is different.
Okay. The one you brought like little caramel bits of Cadbury. They were really good.
Yeah. Well, let's take a break and we will try our snack. What did you think about the Irish crisp sandwich?
I thought it was delightful.
It was good. Actually, I was not expecting to like it, but I really did like it.
I think had the bread that you given me not been the stale piece on the loaf, it would have been even better. Yeah, I'm sorry. You could never please me.
No,
it was really good. And the Cadbury was
Cadbury was
delicious. Really good.
Yeah.
Thank
So-
you so much, Helen. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Helen. One thing I learned about this is that people like to eat this sandwich after a long night of serious crack. Have you ever heard the word crack?
yeah.
It's spelled C-R-A-I-C. That's an Irish slang term for going out and partying.
Oh, okay. Didn't know that.
Yeah. So there you go.
We do have a lot of listeners in Ireland, and if one of you has a recommendation for us, let us know. We do have about 200 to 300 case recommendations right now, and we're trying.
But we've never done an Irish case, so that would be cool.
Yeah.
So today's case is a recommendation from our listener, Sarah, in Indianapolis. So thank you, Sarah. We appreciate the recommendation. It was a really interesting case. Everyone who knew her said that 60-year-old Mary Yoder was one of the most energetic, vibrant, and healthy people you could imagine. In July of 2015, when she went from her usual self to being violently ill over the course of one day, everyone assumed it was a gastrointestinal bug that would pass. On day 2 of her illness, Mary's 69-year-old husband, Bill Yoder, took her to the ER. She seemed to improve as the day went on, but overnight she took a turn for the worse, ending up in the ICU, and shockingly, she passed away the next afternoon. Mary and Bill seemed to have a storybook marriage of 38 years. They raised 3 kids together, started and ran a successful chiropractic clinic together in a suburb of Utica, New York, and they were starting to plan for the next phase of their life together, selling the business, traveling the world, and retiring. All that was cut short when Mary died. Here's an excerpt from Dr. Mary Louise Baker Yoder's obituary to give you some idea of who she was. She was a well-educated woman whose schooling spanned 20 years. She earned her doctorate in chiropractic medicine from Life Chiropractic College in 1986. She and her husband, Dr. William R. Yoder, D.C., were a hard-working and dedicated couple, inseparable in raising their family and building their careers together. Along with her husband, Mary owned and operated Chiropractic Family Care in Whitesboro for 28 years. She was a beloved woman and well-known member of her community who touched countless lives throughout her working and social life. She was wholeheartedly holistic and believed in the therapeutic power of healing that considers the body, mind, and soul. In balancing her life, Mary loved gardening, as evidenced by the beautiful gardens at her home. She also enjoyed dancing, especially Bollywood, belly, and African dancing. She was a gifted artist and pursued photography, painting, and pottery. She was a member of the World Music Choir, singing and drumming as a talented musician. She was an affiliate of the New York State Chiropractic Association and a patron of the Munson Williams Proctor Arts Institute. But above all else, Mary was the absolute best grandmother who lovingly adored each of her grandkids. They were the center of her life. She sounds like she was a lovely, lovely woman.
She sounds amazing.
As the Onondaga County Medical Examiner's Office tried to understand the cause of Mary's sudden illness and death, their work raised more questions than answers. Every avenue they explored seemed to result in a dead end. As investigators gradually unraveled the mystery, relationships would be tested and families torn apart. Mary Baker was born in Buffalo, New York in 1955 and raised in Utica. She was the third of 8 children, 6 girls followed by 2 boys, the births of the 8 kids spanning over 20 years. After attending community college for a bit, she decided to head to the big city to attend college at the University of Buffalo, 200 miles away from Utica, although she still wasn't sure what she wanted to study. She initially stayed with an aunt and uncle who lived near the university, but after a while she wanted to be independent and start living her own life. She had been extremely shy as a child and was looking to get out there and start spreading her wings. She checked the want ads and found a boarding house with a room for rent. The other students living in the boarding house interviewed her and decided she was a good fit. She seemed kind, upstanding, and warm. One of those roommates was Bill Yoder. Mm-hmm. Bill, who was almost 10 years older than Mary, had grown up in Phoenix, Arizona. After 3 years in the Army, he ended up in Buffalo, where he went to college and eventually worked his way into the doctorate program in philosophy. He wasn't sure exactly what he wanted to do with his education, although teaching was always an option. People said he had a brilliant mind and loved the pursuit of knowledge for its own sake. Philosophy appealed to him, examining the big questions about life, meaning, and happiness. Mary had a boyfriend at the time she moved into the boarding house, and Bill didn't even consider the possibility of romance. But over time, he started seeing that Mary was really different than most girls he knew. She seemed so down to earth and authentic. Coincidentally, she and her boyfriend broke up soon after she moved in, and Bill asked her out. This was around 1975 or 1976. Before long, Bill and Mary were dating exclusively. Bill's work on his PhD was going slowly. To finish, all he needed to do really was to write his dissertation, which I know I say all he needed to do. That's obviously a huge amount of work. Mm-hmm. But Bill was procrastinating. He was 7 years into the program at the time he met Mary, and he had taken all the classes he could take. The head of the philosophy program at University of Buffalo called him in and said, "We don't have any teaching spots open, and there are no more classes you can take, so you either need to write your dissertation and finish your degree or move on."
How long do you think it typically takes to write your dissertation? Like at least a couple of years, right?
I think that's right. It's a ton of work. Rather than buckle down and get going on his dissertation, Bill had another idea. He went to Mary, who he had been dating for several months by this time, and said, "Hey, how about we do some traveling?" Mary didn't even have to think about it. She said, yes, absolutely. She could put her studies on hold for a while. They had a garage sale. They sold everything that they couldn't take with, and they loaded up the car and took off with no plan or thought as to where they were headed.
Wow, that's cool.
They ended up in Arizona at first, so Bill could introduce Mary to his parents, and then they took off again, deciding to give Albuquerque a try. Their reasoning? They liked sunshine, and Mary liked the way Albuquerque was spelled. She thought it would be fun to write it as a return address.
Albuquerque is fun to say.
It is. It's hard to spell, too. They both got a job at the local Pizza Hut in Albuquerque. Mary returned to school, transferring her credits from Buffalo, while Bill commenced work on a book inspired by his studies in philosophy. He thought that writing a book would help him organize his thoughts so that he could eventually complete his dissertation.
He was really putting off this dissertation.
I'm going to write a book.
I don't write my dissertation.
For sure. Bill hadn't considered marriage up to this point, but one day while Mary was out, he was struck by inspiration and realized, I'm going to marry this woman. He asked her, she said yes without hesitation, and they decided to pack up their things and head back to Utica, where Mary's family was. Before they got married, Bill talked to Mary about having an open marriage. It was the 70s after all. Mary was not on board with this idea, and so Bill agreed their marriage would be a conventional, exclusive marriage.
Oh, boy.
After the wedding, they took off for the Hawaiian Islands, specifically Kauai. They didn't have much money, and they were planning to hike and backpack and live off the land for as long as they could. They hiked into a remote area on the north side of the island, reachable only by helicopter or a hike of more than 10 miles. They camped under a mango tree near a waterfall, and they both felt like it was paradise.
Dang, we have not done anything remotely that good.
I know. They weren't thinking about the passage of time or anything else. They were just living and meditating and communing with nature. After about a month of this, Bill had another powerful flash of insight. He needed to finish his dissertation. He told Mary, and she agreed that it was time to go back to the real world.
When they returned to Buffalo in 1977, Mary discovered that she was pregnant. It wasn't planned, but Bill and Mary were both thrilled. As Mary's pregnancy progressed, Bill buckled down and went to work on his dissertation on comparative mysticism, heading to the library almost daily. He set a goal of finishing it before the baby was born, and sure enough, he did it. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Liana was born in April of 1978. Bill got a job teaching, first at Vassar College, about 3 hours away from Utica. He didn't love it at Vassar, and when a job fair came through town, Bill went and connected with some people from Furman University, a private university located in Greenville, South Carolina. They offered him a job, so Bill, Mary, and baby Liana packed up and moved down south. They bought a little farmhouse in the country where Bill planted and grew a few marijuana plants. Oh my gosh, that's so weird because we're recording this on 4/20.
I know, how crazy.
Mostly for personal use, although he gave or sold some to a few of Mary's sisters, his own brother, and some friends. This experience with growing pot would later cause Bill problems, as some people wanted to portray him as a big-time drug dealer who was creating a super crop of marijuana. In 1980, Mary gave birth to a second daughter, Tamarin, also known as Tammy, while they were living in South Carolina. After teaching for 3 years, Bill talked to an old friend who said he was going to school to be a chiropractor. As Bill learned more about chiropractic medicine, he became intrigued. It seemed like a great fit with his personal beliefs about the balance between mind, body, and spirit. Bill had his doubts about going back to school, though. He was in his mid-30s by this point, and chiropractic school would take him another 4 or 5 years. But one day, he read a Dear Abby advice column where someone had written in saying that he was 35 years old and wanted to go to med school, but this person was concerned about being in his mid-40s by the time he had finished the 8-year program. Abby wisely replied, quote, "How old will you be in 8 years if you don't attend medical school?"
She was so wise, that Dear Abby.
That was enough for Bill. He told Mary about his idea, and she loved it. In fact, she said, "I'll do it too, and we can become chiropractors together." So they have 2 kids, and they're both like, "Oh, we're going to..."
I'm amazed. Like, yeah, they would go to school and raise their kids, and it's like, how did they find time to do all this?
How did they find the money to do it?
Well, that too. Yeah, I think it was a different time.
Once they finished their degrees, they moved back to Utica and put together a business plan. Out of that was born Chiropractic Family Care in 1988. where Mary and Bill worked together for the next 27 years until Mary's death. In 1990, 2 years after they moved back to Utica, Mary gave birth to their third and final child, a boy they named Adam. I love the name Adam. From there, we fast forward 25 years to the summer of 2015. Liana and Tamron are grown up and moved out. Liana is a doctor living 5 hours away on Long Island, taking some time off her work as a general practitioner to raise her own 4 children. Tamron lives an hour away from Utica in Cooperstown. Adam is done with high school and going to college, but lacks direction. He would go to college for a couple of years, starting at the local community college, and then change his mind about his career direction, drop out, then go back and try something different. Among the areas he studied were digital animation, theater, Chinese, mathematics, and computer science.
Quite the variety of
right?
Interests.
For a while, Adam had worked for his parents at their clinic, working the front desk, checking patients in, and doing general office management work. He could only work part-time because of his schoolwork, so he suggested that his parents hire his girlfriend at the time, a young woman named Katie Connolly. Katie started there part-time as well, and then in early 2014, when Adam decided he needed to focus on school, he told his parents they should hire Katie full-time. They were reluctant at first because they knew Adam and Katie's relationship was a bit tumultuous, and they didn't want any relationship drama in the office. But Adam assured them that they would keep a strict separation between the personal and professional. I have a feeling, because you're telling us this, that it's not going to be so professional.
Can't slip anything past you, can I?
Eventually, Bill and Mary agreed, and 21-year-old Katie became their full-time receptionist/office manager. During the summer of 2015, Bill and Mary were starting to plan what was next for them. By this point, they had been running the clinic for 27 years. Mary was 60 and Bill was approaching 70. They decided it was time to think about selling the business and retiring. Bill had already scaled back his hours. He worked Tuesdays and Thursdays only, still seeing patients, but less and less as time went on. Their plan was to find someone qualified to take over the business, bring them in and work with that person for a year or so before handing over the reins. Their biggest concern was their patients. They wanted to be sure they found someone that the patients liked and were comfortable with. In the short term, though, they were planning the vacation of a lifetime for September and October of 2015. The previous Christmas, their daughter, Liana, had gifted them a week-long cruise. Since they hadn't really taken a vacation since their honeymoon, they decided they would tack on an extra 3 weeks before the cruise and use that time to travel around Europe. During the summer of 2015, they were busy mapping out the trip in detail. They had a big calendar on the wall where they were building their itinerary, and they had arranged for a chiropractor friend of theirs to work at the clinic part-time to see those patients who couldn't go a month without treatment. Life was as perfect as it could be, Bill later reflected.
Financially, the Yoders weren't super well off when thinking about retirement. Their chiropractic business had always been more about helping people. If someone couldn't pay, they would always work something out. The business would definitely generate some cash when they sold it, but probably not enough to retire on. In 2010, Bill published his second book, The Happy Mind: 7 Principles to Clear Your Head and Lift Your Heart. He sometimes held workshops and seminars, and also sold self-help CDs. It was pretty small scale compared to the big self-help gurus of the time like Tony Robbins, but it did generate a little extra income. Also, Bill had recently inherited $400,000 from his father, but as he confided to his daughter Tamron, he wasn't sure whether they would have enough money for 2 people to live off of indefinitely. Monday, July 20th, 2015 started as an ordinary day. Mary was going into the office as usual, and it was Bill's day at home to putter around and maybe run some errands. Bill kissed Mary goodbye as he always did when she left for work. It was a beautiful day, and Mary was planning to do some work in her garden after her work at the clinic was done. Patients who saw Mary that morning said she was her usual vibrant, energetic self. At lunchtime, she told Katie at the front desk that she was going to drive over and check on Grammy. That's how everyone referred to Mary's mother, who was 93 years old. The office normally closed for an hour during lunch. Mary apparently didn't eat lunch with her mother, though. Instead, when she got back to the office, she mixed a protein shake from Shaklee protein powder and almond milk. Mary was passionate about organic foods, nutrition supplements, and often would drink a Shaklee shake instead of lunch or as a pick-me-up in the afternoon. She was a rep for the company and sold their products in a little shop that was part of the clinic, along with pottery, books, and herbal supplements. The last couple of patients who saw Mary at the end of that day noticed immediately that something was off. She seemed distracted, low energy, and she left the treatment room several times to use the bathroom, something she never did when she was working with patients. Around 6:30 p.m., Mary called home, as she usually did, to let Bill know that she was leaving the office. When Bill was home, he would normally prepare something for dinner when Mary was on her way. But on this day, Bill could tell that Mary wasn't herself. She told Bill she was feeling really sick and probably wouldn't want to eat. Mary hardly ever got sick, and when she did, she wasn't one to complain. As soon as Mary got home, she rushed to the bathroom to vomit. When she emerged after about 30 minutes, Bill saw that she was pale and sweaty and barely able to walk. He helped her to the couch and brought a bucket over in case she had to throw up. Around 9:30 p.m., she told Bill that she was going to sleep on the couch and hopefully feel better in the morning. At 6:30 a.m., Bill came downstairs to check on Mary. She seemed the same, maybe even worse than the night before. She said she had hardly slept at all. She had been up all night with abdominal pains, vomiting, and diarrhea. Bill called their daughter, Liana, who was a doctor. Liana told Bill to take Mary to the ER right away. If nothing else, she was probably very dehydrated and would need fluids. At the emergency room, Mary was put on an IV to hydrate her. They ran several tests and gave her medication to help with the nausea and the diarrhea. The treatment helped a bit, and Mary spent much of the day dozing in and out of sleep. At one point, Mary asked Bill to run home and get her asthma medication because she was having some trouble breathing, due to allergies, she thought. When Bill returned, he saw medical staff rushing around at Mary's bedside. They said she had been struggling to catch her breath, and so they were giving her a nebulizer breathing treatment. They stabilized her, and she seemed to be feeling slightly better. But what was wrong with Mary? None of the tests that they ran were giving clear answers. They decided to keep her overnight to monitor her condition. By evening, Mary seemed to be doing better, but her throat was so raw from vomiting that she had a hard time speaking. Although the doctors still didn't know what it was, they believed it would pass, and they told Bill there was no reason to be too concerned. It was probably some type of gastrointestinal bug, although there was also some speculation that it might be her gallbladder. Mary told Bill she was utterly exhausted, so he should go home, get some rest, and go to work in the clinic the next day, which was Wednesday, to cover for her so that they didn't have to cancel any of their patients' appointments. Bill promised to swing by in the morning on his way into the clinic to check on her. That night, Bill put his cell phone in the spare bedroom to charge. That was normally what Bill and Mary did, and he didn't think much of it. Mary seemed like she was on the upswing when he left her that night, and her doctors didn't seem too concerned. But the next morning, he woke at 5:30 a.m. to a banging at the front door. 2 state troopers were there, saying that the hospital had been trying to get a hold of him. Mary had taken a turn for the worse overnight, and she was in the ICU.
I didn't know that a hospital would do that to reach someone.
I didn't either. That surprised me as well, but I guess that's what they do.
And also, if I was in the hospital, you probably would keep your cell phone on you.
I would. I think it was just, I don't think he was thinking about it. I think it was just one of those things that it was just what he normally did.
Oh, you're always defending Bill, aren't you?
I guess so. Bill rushed back to the hospital where doctors told him that Mary had fallen during the night and that her heart had stopped. They were able to resuscitate her, but it wasn't looking good.
Aww.
Bill was allowed to go into her room in the ICU. She was intubated, strapped to the bed, and had IVs in her arm. She was awake and alert, but she couldn't talk or move. She could just move her eyes, and she seemed terrified, not knowing what was happening to her. Bill spoke to her softly, telling her how much he loved her. Adam soon showed up at the hospital. He had been staying with his sister Liana and her family down in Long Island for the past few days. When he heard about his mother's hospitalization the night before, he decided to make the 5-hour drive overnight, stopping at a friend's house to get a couple of hours of sleep before heading into the hospital. Bill called Liana and Tamarin that morning, telling them to come right away. Tammy lived only an hour away, so she got there in the morning, but for Liana, it would take around 6 hours with traffic. She left her house around 6 a.m. The only other person beyond immediate family who came to the hospital that day was Katie. Even though she and Adam were broken up at this time, they still talked regularly, and she wanted to support him. Having worked closely with both Mary and Bill over the last couple of years, Katie was also devastated.
Did Katie still work at the clinic?
She did, yeah. During the course of that day, Mary flatlined 6 or 7 times.
Oh my gosh.
Each time a team would rush in, tell Bill, Adam, and Tammy that they needed to leave, and then they revived Mary. Around 2 p.m., Mary flatlined for about the 7th time that day. This time, doctors told Bill that, although they were able to revive her again, her eyes were fixed and dilated, meaning that she was likely brain dead. Soon after, though, the doctor checked on her again and found that she was once again responsive. He told Bill and the kids, quote, "I don't know how this happened, but she's responsive again. You can all go in and see her." The doctor later said he had never seen anything like it. Bill felt like Mary was hanging on until Liana got there, which she finally did around 2:20 p.m. A few minutes later, Mary went into full cardiac arrest with her husband and all her kids by her bedside. Doctors were unsuccessful in attempts to revive her this time. Mary Yoder was pronounced dead at 2:54 p.m. on July 22nd, 2015.
Oh my God. So within 3 days, she went from this vibrant, energetic, healthy picture of health and happiness to dead.
I know. So shocking.
Her children must have been shocked.
Yeah. The ICU doctors asked Bill if he would release Mary's body for an autopsy, and he agreed. Everyone wanted answers. Just a few days earlier, Bill and Mary had been planning for retirement and the vacation of a lifetime, and now Mary was gone. What could cause a healthy, vigorous, 60-year-old woman to suddenly get sick and die? Mary's body was taken to the medical examiner's office in Onondaga County and scheduled for an autopsy the next morning. We'll be back after a break.
Most autopsies are relatively straightforward. Going into it, there's usually a pretty good idea of the cause of death, and the autopsy helps to confirm it. But in the case of Mary's death, it was truly a medical mystery. They knew she had suffered multiple organ failures over a 24-hour period, which was very strange. The initial hypothesis going into the autopsy was ascending cholangitis? Essentially an infection in the colon that finds its way into the liver and then the bloodstream, which can be fatal. But this was just a theory. Dr. Kenneth Clark was assigned to conduct the autopsy. He requested all of Mary's hospital records and consulted with Mary's doctors, nurses, and family members. Liana, being a doctor herself, became the intermediary between the medical examiner and the Yoder family. In the first phase of the autopsy, which is the external examination of the body, Dr. Clark noted that Mary had several bruises and injuries on her body, but they were all apparently caused by her treatment, all the injections and the many times that she had to be revived by doctors, as well as the fall she took the night before she died. In the second phase, the internal examination, he noticed right away that some of her organs were strangely discolored. Her intestinal tract was mottled red, green, and purple. Her liver was discolored, and so was her heart. I've never heard of this before. Dr. Clark had never seen anything like it in the more than 1,000 autopsies he had done in his career. For the third and final phase of the autopsy, Dr. Clark took some tissue samples to examine under a microscope and also send out for toxicological testing. By August 4th, he had gotten a lot of the testing results back, but he still had no clear indication of what killed Mary. Dr. Clark gave Liana an update that day. Here's what he knew. 1, the culture results didn't show any evidence of bacteria. 2, he had found evidence of apoptosis. Why did you give me this section with the autopsy results?
It was very well planned on my part, wasn't it?
Which is also known as programmed cell death or pre-programmed cell suicide. While programmed cell death is going on in our bodies all the time, Dr. Clark noted an excessive amount of cell death in nearly every organ he examined. He had never seen this in all the autopsies he had performed. The conclusion was that some outside source had entered Mary's system, injuring the cells and initiating a process of programmed cell death, which ultimately resulted in her death. In other words, her death was the result of some type of toxic exposure, not an infection. Liana filled in the family. They wondered if Mary had come into contact with some type of toxin without knowing it. She was really into gardening. even though she took great care to do everything naturally and organically, was it possible that some pesticide or fertilizer had gotten into her system? Or maybe the supplements she took somehow tainted her? They also wondered if Adam might have been exposed to the same toxin a few months earlier. In April, Adam had gotten very ill, and his symptoms were similar to Mary's. He had recovered after 3 or 4 weeks, but it was the sickest he had ever been, even necessitating a trip to the ER at the time. When Mary's toxicology results came back, the mystery deepened. All of the usual toxins tested for came back negative. They sent out for additional tests of some less common toxins, including cyanide, arsenic, barium, and antimony. Those all came back negative. They realized they must be dealing with something pretty rare. The problem was by this time Mary's body had been released by the medical examiner and cremated in accordance with her wishes, and there was very little blood left to test. The lab's toxicologist told Dr. Clark, quote, "Whatever you want to test for next, you should choose it carefully." Oh, man.
I know, that's really...
Those autopsies. And we've had this happen in other cases where there's just not enough blood left to test.
Yeah, and I'm sure, like, as a medical examiner, you just don't think about it. You're like, yeah, we're going to find out what it is, and it's not going to be that hard, but yeah.
It's crazy. Dr. Clark consulted with his boss, the chief medical examiner. They decided to take a walk across the street to the upstate New York Poison Center and consult with the experts over there. After searching through their database looking for similar cases, one possibility that came up was a drug called colchicine. Did I say that right?
Mm-hmm.
It's an anti-inflammatory drug, sometimes prescribed to treat gout, and it can be fatal even in relatively small amounts of a few milligrams. So it's something that's deadly but prescribed.
Well, I think like a lot of drugs are, just...
But you're saying that it's an extremely small amount that can be deadly here.
Right.
So, if you accidentally take an extra pill, that could potentially kill you.
Yeah, you should be really careful not to take an extra pill.
Okay. Gout is a form of inflammatory arthritis, which could be a reason people go in to see a chiropractor, so it seemed like a possibility that they might have the drug at the clinic, and perhaps Mary had accidentally ingested it. They sent the last sample of Mary's blood to test for colchicine, and sure enough, the results came back positive. Colchicine was confirmed to be the cause of Mary's death, but the next question was, how had it gotten into her system? On September 18th, Dr. Clark told Liana that they were certain that colchicine was the cause of Mary's death, and that at this point they were considering it a possible case of accidental contamination. Bill gathered anything he could think of that Mary might have ingested, all of her supplements, her Shaklee protein powder, any food items that she had at the home and the office. He turned them all over to the medical examiner's office. Colchicine works pretty quickly, so it's likely that Mary ingested it sometime on the day she first got sick, Monday, July 20th. Bill texted Katie, asking if she remembered any patients bringing Mary something to eat or drink that day. Katie said no. She said that Mary had gone to her mom's at lunchtime, but she didn't think that Mary ate anything while she was there. She said that Mary had her protein shake made from her own protein powder and almond milk after she got back, along with her vitamins. Nothing new or different than her usual routine. Didn't you say that Bill cooked all their meals, or on the day
He usually
that she
cooked dinner
worked?
on the day she worked, yeah. 3 days after Mary's death, the family held a celebration of life gathering. They chose to have it at Bill and Mary's home because Mary's garden was in full bloom. Over 200 people showed up. Bill was having a hard time facing people after the sudden loss of his wife, and he stayed upstairs through much of the event. Bill's daughter, Liana, didn't know how to console her dad, and she was worried that he might be suicidal. She suggested that her dad reach out to Mary's sister, Kathleen, to talk to her. Mary had been close to her older sister, and Kathleen had lost her husband unexpectedly about a year earlier, so she had been through what Bill was going through not so long ago. At the celebration of life, Kathleen gave Bill a letter in which she offered her support and said she was there if he wanted to talk. A few days later, Bill called her and then went over to Kathleen's house, which was nearby, to talk. He felt like it was helpful, and they made plans to get together again soon. After that, Bill went out west with Adam for a few weeks to see family and just to get away from it all. He and Kathleen exchanged some texts during their trip, and when he got back home on August 25th, he texted Kathleen, quote, "I've missed you over the last couple of weeks, and I'm looking forward to spending some time together soon."
Oh, God, Bill.
You see where this is going?
I mean, keep going.
In September, Bill and Kathleen's relationship turned romantic. Their texts became more flirty, and they started talking on the phone for hours. By early October, the two were in love.
Too soon, Bill.
In a text from October 7th, Bill wrote, quote, "Sitting here with a glass of wine and your photo, telling you about my amazing day. Your smile melts my heart, and I keep falling in love all over again," unquote.
If any of my sisters happen to be listening, don't go near my husband for at least, I don't know. I don't know what the right amount of time is because life is short. I mean, Bill's 70.
And he's 70 years old, yeah.
And I know that not all men, but a lot of men have a hard time being alone. Mm-hmm. There's just a huge ick factor here for me.
There's a huge ick factor for sure. By mid-October, 3 months after Mary's death, the medical examiner was still working on the investigation and treating it as most likely an accidental poisoning. They hadn't gotten the police involved at all to this point. That changed on October 15th when another of Mary's sisters, Sharon Mills, called the Oneida County Sheriff's Office. Detective Mark Van Namey took the call. Sharon asked him if anyone was investigating the death of Mary Yoder. Van Namey hadn't heard the name before, and so he asked Sharon for some details. She provided the background and told him that the medical examiner had determined Mary's cause of death to be colchicine toxicity. After getting off the phone, Van Namey Googled colchicine and saw that it was pretty unusual to be used in a poisoning. He saw that it was difficult to purchase, which meant if someone had bought it, there would be a paper trail somewhere. Van Namey then reached out to the medical examiner's office, which told him that they hadn't ruled anything out yet, but they weren't really looking at it as criminal at this point. They agreed to stay in touch as things moved forward. Van Namey then talked to his lieutenant, and they agreed it made sense to make a few preliminary inquiries while the medical examiner was continuing his investigation. Van Namey reached back out to Sharon and interviewed her further. He was very interested in Bill right off the bat, seeing as he was the spouse and also a doctor who might have access to a drug like colchicine. Sharon told Van Namey that Bill had a brilliant mind and that if he killed Mary, they would never catch him. Van Namey also sent evidence preservation letters to Verizon related to Mary and Bill's phone numbers to ensure that nothing got deleted. He also did a database search for any life insurance claims that had been filed after Mary's death, but nothing came back.
Nothing much happened in the next month. Near the end of November, there was a meeting between the two pathologists who had worked on Mary's case, Detective Van Namey and his lieutenant, and Lori Lisi, the assistant district attorney. They spent 3 hours laying out all the facts that they currently had. After the meeting, Van Namey sent evidence preservation letters to UPS and FedEx regarding any shipments that they had made to the Yoder's home or office. Again, they were thinking that because colchicine was a treatment for gout, maybe someone had ordered it to be delivered to the office. They were no further in determining whether this had been an accidental poisoning or an intentional homicide. But 3 days after their meeting on November 23rd, that all changed when an anonymous letter arrived at the medical examiner's office and an identical copy of the letter arrived at the police department. Uh-oh. This letter was 2 typed pages. We won't read the entire thing, but here are the most relevant parts. Quote, "I know the police are currently looking into this death, but I don't know where to send this information. This is in regards to the July 22nd death of Mary Yoder in Utica, New York. If the toxin found in her was colchicine, Adam Yoder, her son, is responsible. He told me he did it, and moreover, he told me how and where he put the rest of the toxin. Adam drove back so early that day after her death, arriving in Utica at 6:30 a.m., meaning that he left Long Island very early morning because she was in grave condition then. It's weird that he'd drive down to Long Island and then go back north in the middle of the night, especially since he'd been so standoffish and just mean to her, telling her he functioned better by not seeing or talking to her. He felt she was unfamiliar to him, and he resented that. she should have helped him more.
I think what the letter writer is referring to, I didn't mention it, but Adam and his mother had a fight on Mother's Day. I don't think it was super consequential or super bad, but I think that's what the person is referring to, is something to do with that fight. And then Adam had gone down to see his sister. He was there in Long Island.
Mm-hmm.
He left like late at night to get back to her hospital bed early the morning that she ended up passing away.
Was this she should have helped him more? Do you know what they're referring to? Just in life in general?
I think in general, the person writing the letter is saying that Adam was resentful that his mom didn't help him more.
The letter continues. When I saw him a couple of days ago, he appeared agitated, and he said he was the reason for her death and he wished he could take it back. Then he said he got a bottle of colchicine off online and put the toxin in one of her vitamins when he was over at his parents' house. He said his mom noticed he seemed disturbed at the time, and she thought it was since he was drinking at their house. Adam said he told her, no, beer isn't not the reason that he was disturbed and to drop it. He said he apologized to his parents for ruining the holiday of Father's Day and left.
I said they got in a fight on Mother's Day. They did. Apparently there was also a fight on Father's Day.
And Mother's Day and Father's Day, they can
tough.
be tough. The letter continues. Adam was upset people weren't paying more attention to him. He felt he deserved more attention, and he thought people should be nicer to him. Same. He acted resentful and belligerent to his immediate family and became visibly irritated. People kept talking about his mom. He says he expected a financial payout after the death, which did not come. After he found out he was not getting the money he thought he would, he said he regretted what he did. He was hysterical and he didn't know what he was going to do, but he had ideas. He said that now the colchicine container is under the front seat of the Jeep. Is that his Jeep?
Mm-hmm.
That's where he said it was until he figures out where to put it or dispose of it next. I asked him to show me where he kept it currently, but he said no, but described a small glass bottle. I'm sending this anonymously because I can't keep this information. It is right to alert authorities, but it's still hard to do. I fear attaching my name to give the information right now. I'm very close to him, but what he did was wrong, and I believe he would be capable of repeating the act. That's the end of the letter. The letter goes on to provide details of Mary's illness and death in order to add credibility. This was clearly someone that was close to this situation, like maybe, can I say?
Yeah, if you want to speculate.
Katie? Investigators took DNA samples from those who handled the letter internally for elimination purposes, then sent the letter and envelope to the New York State Crime Lab for testing. Before receiving the letter, investigators still hadn't been sure whether a homicide had actually been committed, and if it had been, the only person of interest so far was Bill Yoder. The letter changed everything. Obviously, they would need to speak with Adam Yoder. Before calling Adam in, though, Detective Van Namey first subpoenaed Easy Pass records for Bill, Mary, and Adam Yoder to see where they were at various times around Mary's illness and death. He also attempted to get a search warrant for Adam's vehicle, but it was denied by the judge. The precedent was that anonymous information is presumed to be false, so it would require additional corroborating information in order to get a warrant. Investigators also did some basic research on both Bill and Adam, where they lived, what vehicles they drove, things like that. They also learned that Bill and Mary had 2 other kids, Liana and Tammy, and that Mary had several siblings. Do we know how many siblings Mary had?
She was the third of 8 children.
That's right. There were 6 girls and 2 boys.
Yes.
Then they started interviewing people. Typically, if you have some persons of interest, you don't start with them right away. You start further out and work your way toward the persons of interest. Is that your own personal experience there with the police work?
Yes, as a longtime investigator, that's the way I usually run a case.
Gotcha. In this case, Bill and Adam were the 2 primary persons of interest. So first detectives interviewed Liana, who confirmed that Adam had been at her house in Long Island starting a few days before Mary got sick and left late the night before Mary died. The Easy Pass records were consistent with this as well. They also interviewed Bill and Mary's other daughter, Tammy, Mary's siblings, and some of Mary's friends, and the patients who saw her on the day she became ill. No one could come up with any reason why someone would want to murder Mary. Everyone loved her. You could say there's something about Mary.
I guess you could.
They also learned from their interviews that Bill was now in a relationship with Mary's sister Kathleen, which definitely raised some eyebrows, including my own.
By December 8th, they were ready to talk to Adam. Detective Van Namey called him up, explained who he was, and said they'd like to speak with him. Adam said, "I'll be right there," and he showed up within an hour. Van Namey was curious whether Adam would show up in his Jeep Wrangler, which is where the anonymous letter writer said the leftover colchicine was stored, and sure enough, he did. After going through some basic background questions, Detective Van Namey told Adam about the letter. He didn't give a lot of details, but he said that the letter led them to believe there was evidence of the crime in his vehicle, and asked Adam if he would allow them to check the specific spot under the front seat of his car. Adam hesitated. He said, quote, "I want to be more than cooperative with you, but I'd like to talk to an attorney before I consent to this search," unquote. Van Namey asked if he had an attorney in mind, and Adam said no, so the detective offered to get a public defender that Adam could consult with. Adam spoke with the public defender on the phone in private for 10 minutes, and then he agreed to the search. Adam, Van Namey, and a forensic technician went out to the vehicle. There was a ton of garbage and rubbish on the floor of the vehicle. Apparently Adam was a big slob. But the forensic technician reached under the front passenger seat with a gloved hand and immediately pulled out a small glass bottle wrapped in cardboard, along with a wadded up receipt for the purchase of 1 gram of colchicine, $189.22 from a company called Art Chemicals, shipped to Bill and Mary's office address in early February of 2015. The ship-to company name on the receipt was Chiro Family Care, slightly different from the actual business name, which was Chiropractic Family Care. The receipt also contained an email address for the person who ordered the colchicine, Mr. Adam Yoder 1990 at gmail.com. On seeing the glass bottle and the receipt, Adam said, quote, "I've never seen that before. It was certainly put there by someone else," unquote.
Oh, wow.
This is a real mystery, isn't it?
It really is. It's a little weird that the anonymous letter knew exactly where the chemical was.
That is a little weird, isn't it?
And also $189 for 1 gram. That's really pricey.
Not cheap. The receipt and the email address on the receipt were solid leads for the investigators to follow. They called the company Art Chemicals and confirmed that the Mr. Adam Yoder 1990 email address was used as the primary point of contact for the colchicine purchase. Detective Van Namey then issued a subpoena to Google for information about the Mr. Adam Yoder 1990 Gmail account. A subpoena would provide some basic information about the account, when it was created, and the IP addresses that were used for logging in and logging out. The subpoena results came back and showed the IP addresses, but to get more detail on the physical location of those IP addresses, they would have to issue additional subpoenas, which would take some time.
Wow.
At this point, investigators were still focused on Bill and Adam, but they felt like the anonymous letter and the colchicine in Adam's Jeep were most likely an attempt to frame him. Adam had been very cooperative, and it didn't make sense that he would drive his Jeep to the police station knowing that the murder weapon was sitting under the front seat. And there's no way he would have consented to a search knowing the colchicine was there. Investigators wondered about Bill's relationship with Kathleen, which they had learned about in their interview with Bill's daughter, Liana. Did the relationship really start over a month after Mary's death, or could it have started before Mary died? Either way, the relationship looked bad for Bill and made him a leading suspect. But what kind of father would commit a murder and then try to frame his son with an anonymous letter? That would have to be one cold-hearted dad.
Was that a foreshadow?
I'm trying to keep you guessing here. I hope I'm doing a good job of it.
I am. I didn't even think about the relationship between Bill and Kathleen starting before her death. I'm so naive sometimes.
You are, yeah. Another person whose name came up in the interview with Liana was Katie Conley. She was the office manager at the chiropractic clinic, so it's likely that she would have signed for any packages. Also, she was the only other person working at the office the day Mary got sick. She knew the inner workings of the office, and she and Adam had dated, although they were broken up at the time of Mary's death. police decided to call Katie in for an interview before they interviewed Bill.
On December 18th, Detective Van Namey called Katie and asked if she could come in. They said they needed her help as they prepared to interview Bill. They wanted to understand how things worked at the office, especially regarding shipping and receiving, the dynamic between Bill and Mary, and what took place on the day that Mary became ill. She came in and spoke with investigators for a couple of hours on the 18th and again on the 19th. She struck the detectives as forthcoming and eager to help. She gave them a recap of her relationship with Adam, Mary's schedule on the day she got sick, and what patients were seen that day. Katie told them that she was aware that some type of toxin had killed Mary, but hadn't heard what it was. Detective Van Namey told her it was a drug called colchicine. Katie said that she had never heard of it. Katie confirmed that she most likely would have signed for any packages coming into the office. They asked if Adam had ever received packages at the clinic, knowing that his name had been on the colchicine order. She said yes, there had been a couple of times. Once in 2014, he had ordered an iPad or an iPhone and had it delivered to the office. And once in early 2015, a package had come addressed to Adam Yoder, and he had come to pick it up. They also asked what email addresses she had for Adam. She knew of a couple of different email addresses. One was similar to the Mr. Yoder 1990 email, but without the 1990 on the end, and the other was very different. Over the next couple of days, after their initial interview with Katie, some interesting new facts came in from lab testing and subpoenas. First, the initial DNA testing of the envelope that contained the anonymous letter showed that there was female DNA on the stamp. Second, they were starting to get results on the locations of the IP addresses where the Mr. Adam Yoder 1990 Gmail account had been accessed, and one of those results came up as the Conley residence where Katie lived with her parents. We need music sometimes.
I know.
Like,
dun, dun, dun.
Can you explain how IP addresses work really quickly?
I mean, an IP address is like a address for a physical device. So if you can trace something back to an IP address, you know what device that it was on. And so if it was on your home computer and you can find out what the IP address is, you can say, oh, this happened on that computer. So in this case, they found out that this Gmail address was accessed from the computer in Katie's home.
Okay, essentially, I'm computer illiterate, and that just all confuses me.
That's part of the problem with this case is a lot of the evidence is based on computer forensics, and it is super confusing. I am computer literate. It confuses me as well.
So it's not necessarily the geographical location, but the device from which it came.
Yes.
Up to this point, the police had looked at Katie as a good source of information on the dynamics of the Yoder's clinic and relationship. Now they wondered if she was somehow involved. They were scheduled to interview Bill Yoder for the first time on December 23rd, but they decided to try and get Katie in one more time before that. She came in on December 21st. After recapping some of the things they had discussed previously, Van Namey came around to the email address and the IP address. She said that if the email had been accessed from her house, it must have been Adam that did it. He had been to her house many times and would have access to her devices. Were they on good terms, Adam and Katie?
It depends on when you ask that question. Like over time, they were on good terms, bad terms. It was up and down.
As Van Namey heard Katie pointing the finger at Adam, his thoughts went back to the anonymous letter. He asked, Katie, did you write us that letter? At that question, she got visibly shaky and started crying. Eventually, she managed to say, I am so scared. You can't protect me. Van Namey said, quote, Katie, you might be our only witness. If you wrote us a letter in November, I need to know. Finally, Katie answered, yes, she said. She did write the letter. I knew it. That was the point Van Namey later said that Katie went from being a witness to being a suspect. They decided from that point on, any interactions with her would be recorded and she would be given her Miranda rights prior to speaking with her. The detective stepped out of the room after Katie admitted to writing the letter, giving her a break. That break. They always give you that break to nail you.
They do.
During that break, investigators got word back that another IP address where the Gmail account had been accessed from was verified. It was Katie's cell phone. After the break, they came back to question Katie more after reading her Miranda rights. They still tried to play it off as if Adam was their primary suspect and they were looking for Katie's help, but the questions became more direct at this point. We were able to get the audio of this interrogation, and we're going to play a few clips for you. Here they are talking about Katie's cell phone being used to log into the Gmail account.
And again, I still have a big problem. We still have to clear you because right now we got that Gmail account that somehow is attached to you.
Right, and I'm afraid that it's never going to be attached to Adam. Yeah, you keep saying that.
Well, I'm not saying it won't be. I mean, but right now, we definitely know it's attached to this phone in your house.
Right.
Okay? And Adam has no control over this phone. Only you do. So we know you went in, you logged into that account. There's no sayings or buts about that. We know that. There's no way. There's no other physical way. You had to enter a password. You had to log into it. Okay? Agreed?
I hear you, yeah.
Okay. There's no other way. He can't do that. He's not here. He doesn't have access to your phone.
Right, I don't think so.
No, he can't. We checked. There's no way he can get into your phone if he's not here. He can't dial into it, be anywhere else. He can't get into your phone. Can't do it. So we verified that.
Right.
So we know you're the one that logs into this Gmail account. And this account, you don't. That's the thing. When we ask you more specific questions about the Gmail account, you kind of distance yourself from. You're not giving us good answers.
I'm trying.
Okay, but tell us when you set it up. When did you set up that account?
I didn't set it up.
Okay. But yet you know how to log in and get the password to it.
Right, I know the password.
Okay, so who set it up?
Well, I know some of Adam's other passwords too. He knows mine.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that we set up each other's accounts.
Okay. I understand. You don't set up each other's accounts, but you get into this account though.
Right.
Okay.
Just like you can get into mine.
Okay. You're saying you had to log into that account and shut it down.
Right.
We know you did that from that phone. There's no saying or buts about it.
Right.
So we know it's got into from your house also. You log into that account. You have to use a password and you have to get into it. So now the question becomes, going back further, when we get these IP addresses, the IP addresses come back to you, we're going to come and say, okay, what's the deal? You're logging into these accounts. You're telling us you don't have anything to do with the Gmail account, but yet you do. Correct? So that's what I'm saying. You got to help us with that Gmail. You distance yourself from that Gmail
I'm
account.
trying to help.
Okay, I don't want you to, but you can't tell us about that account.
You can hear Katie getting frustrated there, trying to explain away the evidence that she accessed this Gmail account both at home and on her cell phone. At the end, when she says, "I'm trying to help," the sound that you hear is her slamming her water bottle down on the table. Here's another short clip of her getting frustrated and the cops trying to convince her that they're really after Adam and Bill.
You gotta give us answers to some of these questions.
I'm trying.
Okay, well, you're gonna have to let us know because we have to be comfortable with you to move on to Adam and to Bill.
Right.
Okay?
No one likes a mumbler, Katie.
No. Investigators wanted Katie to take a voice stress test, and she said that she was willing, but she had to leave. And here they are talking about that.
Wait, can you do this for me? Is there any chance I can get you to do it?
Like right now?
Yeah.
No, I don't think right now.
Why? What is more important than what we're talking about?
Well, I think I've told you a lot, and now, like, it's coming back on me. Like, everything's coming back on me. And
Did I put this on you?
No.
I haven't put this on you
No,
at
but
all.
he has.
Who has? The other guy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, I think you can appreciate, like, what position I'm in.
Okay.
And I'm nervous, and I'm scared, and I was supposed to be somewhere at 4 o'clock.
Where are you supposed to be for?
I'm supposed to be with friends. Well, I was supposed to be at, like, a family Christmas event.
Okay.
And then I'm supposed to meet my own family at 6.
Okay. Well, so you're telling me you won't do it now?
Right.
Will you come back and do it?
Yeah, I'll come back. But
Tomorrow?
I
Can I
don't
come
know
back
when.
today?
I don't know when.
I'm trying to get to the bottom of this for you and get you out of the way.
I know.
You know what I mean? You're not helping me right now.
I'm
You-
trying to, and I feel like I'm being, like, put under a microscope and pointed at.
Well, you have a lot of information, and that's what we need,
Right.
you know?
But I feel like nothing is being helpful, and it's just, like, coming back on me.
Did I say it was coming back on?
No,
I've not said it
no,
once.
I know, but I feel like it is. And I don't like that.
No one likes a whiner, Katie.
She does come off as really whiny, doesn't she?
does.
I think it's super interesting listening to this, though, especially the cops are, they're really trying hard to be like, Katie, we're just trying to get you to help us because we need to nail Adam and Bill. And, that's all we're trying to do here.
When she was read her Miranda rights, she should have asked for an attorney and
Yes.
probably shut it down.
Yes. So last clip I want to play of this interrogation. This is a really interesting moment when they're talking about the murder weapon, the colchicine, and Katie makes a very odd observation.
It is possible that somebody planted that on it, because I can tell you right now, in the FBI's studies and everything that we went back on, guys don't hang on to the murder weapon because that's why they get caught.
Right, but guys also don't use poison.
A lot of people do.
But they say it's a lady's weapon.
They say it's a lady's weapon?
So I know it's very faint there,
Yeah.
but she says, guys also don't use poison. They say it's a lady's weapon.
It's funny because I was going to mention that.
Yeah. It's a really strange thing to say if
Yeah.
you're in Katie's position right there.
But what motive would Katie possibly have?
Well, that is a great thing that we should discuss in part 2 of
You
this episode.
son of a...
Sorry, I know. It's a little bit of a cliffhanger. We're starting to get somewhere on the case, but yeah, we're going to have to wrap up and talk about it more next time. Before we wrap up, I have a little thing I want to share with you. So we've discussed in the past our theme music. We did a little bit of a poll to our listeners, and they all loved our
A very
theme music.
unscientific poll,
Yes.
by the way,
So we're not going to change our theme music, but
today.
there was a new site that popped up. There's all these AI
Yeah.
sites like ChatGPT. Well, a new one popped up the other day that I was really interested in, and it's a AI music generation thing. And I was like, this is pretty crazy. I think it was called udio.com. And so the first thing I did, of course, is I said, make me a Love, Marry, Kill theme song.
Yeah.
And so I have 3 little theme songs I want to share with you. What it does is...
Do I get to pick one and then we can have a new theme song?
We could talk about them all, but I think we should still stick with what
Okay.
we have. But what it does is it generates like a 30-second little clip of a song. And if you want, you can then go back and extend it or whatever. But
And did you feed it our theme music?
No, I didn't
Okay.
feed it. All I said was generate a theme song for a true crime podcast called Love, Marry, Kill with Rich and Tina as the host. So the first one I'm going to play is heavy metal. It's going to sound a little bit 9 Inch Nails-ish. You're not going to like it, but
Okay.
here it is. Are you ready?
Yeah. That's horrible.
Tales of passion, twisted dark tales, where love and death they bind and fray. Tina and Rich, through the veil they gaze, unearthing the truth where the lost ones lay.
Pretty good, huh?
I mean, I don't hate it as much as I should. I think I just like my name being in there.
That's all AI generated. I mean, honestly, it blows me away.
It's freaking amazing, yeah.
I think you're going to like the next one a little bit more. It's a little more pop
I
oriented.
am more of a pop girl for sure.
All right, here you go.
So listen up to tales so chilling where the hearts collide. The plots and thrilling, if a glance could kill, you'd surely know who's in love, who'll marry, and who will go. Now the sirens wail instead, and the mystery's just ahead.
That's pretty good, huh?
I mean, I love the music. That's totally like my
Yeah.
beat from back in the day, but they didn't say her name.
They didn't say her
So-
name, no.
But yeah, it was good.
It was pretty good. Now, I forgot to mention, it also gives names to the songs it creates. So the first one
Okay.
was called Nuptial Reaper. That one was called Whispers of Guilt. And the
Okay.
last one I'm
Wow,
going to play,
those are, it's shocking.
it is shocking. The last one I'm going to play is my favorite. It's called Tales Untold. Ready?
All right, yeah.
Hear the stories on the cast. Tales so dark they're unsurpassed. Catch the clues you won't ignore. In Love, Marry, Kill, what's in store? Tune in now, don't miss the thrill. We got stories that'll chill. Diving deep with every skill. For Love, Marry, Kill, with Fruit's the Bitter Pill.
La, la.
Well, I think it's a done deal.
Is that amazing?
I love it.
I'm like blown away. Like, honestly, it's a little scary.
And so I guess the ownership of music is always such an issue.
Yeah.
Who just is that unownable? Because
I don't know. I guess we
can
own
we
it.
steal it is my question.
Oh yeah, we generate it. We can use it.
All right, let's do it.
Well, let us
Okay.
know what you think of those.
I mean, I really enjoyed all of them. Really, they were
Yeah.
cute and boppy. And that's when I talk about our theme music. I think that's what I'm looking for is more music and less, just that violin
Yeah.
sound. But
Yeah.
just my opinion. I was greatly overruled, and I put my tail between my legs. And
I still would not vote for changing our music. I think that was really fun though to
I know
play
people
around
do
with that.
identify strongly with music, but I thought those were all really cool.
Yeah, very cool.
And frightening.
And frightening.
And horrifying.
I know.
Actually, listeners, you don't even know if this is the real Rich and Tina right now, or maybe, just maybe,
Maybe.
an AI-generated version of ourselves, complete with mispronunciations
And mistakes and everything.
stuttering, and
You never know. You
because the
never know.
AI versions of ourselves would have to be imperfect, right?
Yeah.
Because we're very well. No, you're lovely. I'm a disaster.
No, you're lovely also. When I shared that music generation site with our son, who likes to create music on his own,
He was depressed.
He went into an existential depression.
He really did.
He was like,
and
thanks, I
hate
hate it.
I feel bad for everyone, but young people today trying to come up with careers.
I know. Who knows what
It's-
jobs are going to be available
Yeah.
and what aren't.
It's been I think both our children are struggling with that.
Yeah. And on that happy note,
Until next time.
don't kill your wife.
Oh wait, and eat a chipwich. I'm going to call it a chipwich,
an
even though I
Irish
know that
crisp sandwich.
it was really good
Yes.
because there was zero nutritional value, and I love an empty calorie, but yet smack some.
Cheese and onion chips.
Well, I
bread
think
and butter.
any chip.
I know,
you
but I think
could
the
do.
cheese and onion really added a nice.
Yeah, I think I'd prefer a plain. I would
okay.
prefer a plain chip, but yeah, just some white bread and
Some butter?
lots of butter, and some
chips.
potato chips.
Yeah.
Lunch.
Yeah. Thanks,
Put it
Helen,
in
for
your kids.
introducing
Put
us
it
to
in your
that.
kids' lunchbox this week and let us know if you liked it or not. Okay. Until next time, don't kill your husband.
And don't kill your wife. Hi, I'm Rich.
Sorry. One more time.
Hi, I'm Rich.
And I'm Tina.
Woo! Hi, I'm Rich.
Oh God, why?
Hi, I'm Rich.
And I'm Tina. We could just leave. Okay, if this next one we screw up, we just leave it.
Okay.